interest, quit borrowing, cut up the credit cards. You have to balance a budget every day. I had to balance a budget as governor. Why is Congress the only group that refuses to balance a budget? We'll stop the spending, we'll stop the borrowing, we'll eliminate their earmarks, and I'll veto any spending bill that doesn't take us back to pre-COVID levels. That will save us trillions. And then we'll take as many federal programs as we can and we'll send them down to the state level. That way we'll reduce the size of the federal government. That way we reduce the size of the federal government, but we empower people on the ground. Think education, think healthcare, think welfare, think mental health. If you cut those strings and send those resources down, then it's more customized to the state that it's in, and you don't have Washington bureaucrats making those decisions. And then we need to open up the middle class. Right now, the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. So we want to cut taxes on the middle class and simplify the brackets. We want to eliminate the federal gas and diesel tax in this country. And we want to make small business tax cuts permanent. Small businesses are the heartbeat of our economy. We need to start acting like it. And speaking of Congress, Congress has one job, just one job, to make sure that they put a budget out on time. Now, this week, they're talking about another government shutdown. Do you know Congress has only given us a budget on time 4 times in 40 years? 4 times in 40 years. You know what I'm going to do about that? You don't give us a budget on time, you don't get paid, period. Don't you think it's finally time we had term limits in Washington, D.C.? Don't you think we need to have mental competency tests for anyone over the age of 75? Now, let me be clear when I say that. I'm not being disrespectful when I say that. We all know, bless you, we all know people who are over 75 that can run circles around us. And then we know Joe Biden. Congress has become the most privileged nursing home in the country. This is nothing to play with. These are people making decisions on the future of our economy. These are people making decisions on our national security. We need to know they're at the top of their game. And then let's talk about what's happening at the border. I can't believe this is the United States of America. 9 million illegal immigrants have come across that border. We had more fentanyl cross the border last year that would kill every single American. #1 cause of death for adults 18 to 45, fentanyl. And don't think for a second China doesn't know what they're doing when they send it over. Now, when I was governor of South Carolina, we passed the toughest illegal immigration law in the country. President Obama sued us over it, and we won. I want to take what we did in South Carolina and go national with it. We'll do a national E-Verify program where every business has to prove that the people they hire are in this country legally. We will defund sanctuary cities once and for all. No more safe havens in America. We'll put 25,000 Border Patrol and ICE agents on the ground and let them do their job. We'll go back to the Remain in Mexico policy so that no one even steps foot on U.S. soil. And instead of catch and release, we'll go to catch and deport. That is what will stop what's happening on the border. Now, if you look, there was a chance to have done something on the border last week. Congress had a bill that would deal with the border. Now, the good part about that bill was it strengthened asylum laws. We need to strengthen asylum laws. 3 million illegal immigrants came in under the Trump administration because our asylum laws weren't strong enough. The weaker parts of the bill was it didn't have the Remain in Mexico policy, which we have to have, and it had a 5,000 person threshold. We don't even want a 1 person threshold. We have to make sure we know exactly who's coming into this country. But what went wrong is Congress should have gotten in a room and not finished until they could pass a strong border bill. But what happened? Donald Trump went and told them, don't pass anything until after November because it would hurt him in the election. We can't wait one more day to pass a strong border bill. So Congress up and left and went on vacation for a week. And what they should have done and what should happen is Congress needs to get in a room and figure it out. And Trump needs to stay out of it, period. That's what we need to do on the border. And you know, growing up in rural South Carolina, my parents taught me you always take care of those who take care of you. But I'm going to ask you if we're taking care of those who take care of us. Right now in America, over 35,000 of our veterans are homeless. 1 in 3 suffers from PTSD or thoughts of suicide. We lose 22 heroes a day to suicide. If a veteran needs a doctor's appointment at the VA, on average, it takes 29 days. Why 29 days? Because on the 30th day, they can go to the doctor or hospital of their choice. So midway through the 29 days, they get a call to reschedule, and the clock starts all over again. It's shameful how we treat our veterans. Now, I'm the proud wife of... I'm the proud wife of a combat veteran who served in Afghanistan. And when Michael came home to us, that was a lot of prayers answered. But that was the easy part. When we got home, life got hard. Michael couldn't hear loud noises. He couldn't be in crowds. Life had passed him by for that year that he was gone, and the transition was tough. We can't just love our men and women when they're gone. We got to love them when they come back home, too. We need to do more than just the 2-week transition. We need to take care of them for the long haul. That's why we need telehealth, so we can give them the mental health care they need right when they need it. They should be able to go to the doctor or hospital of their choice. They've earned that right. And I think the best way we go about dealing with veterans' health care, I think every member of Congress should have to get their health care from the VA, and you watch how fast that gets fixed. It'll be the best health care you've ever seen, guaranteed, I promise. And speaking of military, let's talk about national security. The world is on fire, literally. You've got a war in Europe. You've got a war in the Middle East. You've got North Korea testing intercontinental ballistic missiles capable of hitting the U.S. You've got China doing cyber attacks on our infrastructure. And Russia is doing blinding satellites that will keep us from seeing anything that's coming or any cyber attacks that they do to us. This is the time when America needs a leader that has moral clarity. We need to have a leader that knows the difference between good and bad and right and wrong. A week ago, 2 weeks ago, in South Carolina, Donald Trump said that he would encourage Putin to invade our allies. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. Because in that moment that Donald Trump went off the teleprompter, he chose to side with a thug where 500,000 people have died or been wounded because Putin invaded Ukraine. Trump chose to side with a dictator who kills his political opponents. Trump chose to side with a madman who arrests American journalists and holds them hostage. Trump decided to side with Putin, who's made no bones about the fact that he wants to destroy America. And he wants to side with him over the allies that stood with us after 9/11? In that one moment of going off the teleprompter, he made our allies more vulnerable, he emboldened Putin, and he put our military members who were serving in those areas in danger. We need a president that knows that America can never be so arrogant to think we don't need friends. We need a president and a Congress that understands this is about preventing war. We need a president and Congress that understands that peace through strength matters. And we need a Congress and a president who understands that you don't walk back from your friends. You grow more friends and you build your alliance. That's what we have to do going forward.
You've been listening to Nikki Haley's speech down at Utah Valley University at the Herbert Institute as she hosts a campaign rally while she's here in the Beehive State today. We're going to go ahead and take a quick break. We'll come back with Inside Sources coming up next on KSL News Radio.
Every single show on KSL News Radio is part of the KSL app, so you can listen when you want. When you want. News with Tim and Amanda when you get up? Hit live on the app. Dave and Dejanovic at 9 and Boyd Matheson at 1. They're on the app. Plus, you can podcast them for work. And Jeff Kaplan? Yeah, he's there on the app. The movie show, KSL Greenhouse, latest traffic report? They're all on the app for KSL News Radio. KSL News Radio.
Remember that first paycheck when you started working all those years ago? You looked at the net amount and thought, whoa, what happened here? Ah, the joy of taxes. It could be this way with your retirement accounts. You know how much you've saved, but if you haven't planned for Uncle Sam, you could come up short in retirement. With tax laws constantly changing, there's a lot you need to know to make sure you're not paying more than your fair share. Mike Stevens and the team at Capital Wealth Advisors can help you create a plan that shows you how taxes could affect you now and in the future. Set up your tax strategy session with Mike Stevens and Capital Wealth Advisors now. Call 801-210-5500. That's 801-210-5500. Make sure you know how these changes could affect you so you can avoid some of those whoa moments in retirement. Call 801-210-5500. Advisory services offered through Capital Wealth Advisors, LLC, a state of Utah registered investment advisor. Firm may not give tax advice.
At this time of year, isn't it great to have something to look forward to? There's something about January and February. You've just got to have that thing on the calendar you're so looking forward to. Might I recommend dinner at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse? Let's talk about Hotel Park City. That's where you're going to find Ruth's Chris Steakhouse up in Summit County. After a day of skiing, it is the perfect way to wrap up that perfect day at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. And then, of course, right in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City, we have a Ruth's Chris Steakhouse here as well, right in the middle of all the action. So whether it's a play, a ball game, whatever it might be, that delicious dinner, it's waiting for you at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Plus, it's only fair to remind you that Valentine's Day now is just around the corner, and your sweetheart is going to love that amazing meal. Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, 275 Southwest Temple, and also Hotel Park City. The meal you're waiting for, it's waiting for you at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse.
For the ones who work hard to ensure their crew can always go the extra mile, and the ones who get in early so everyone can go home on time, there's Grainger, offering professional-grade supplies backed by product experts so you can quickly and easily find what you need. Plus, you can count on access to a committed team ready to go the extra mile for you. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Progressive presents Precious Moments.
Nothing beats driving cross-country in our RV.
This is so much fun, Dad. I don't even need to look at my phone.
It's not the destination, it's the journey. Jinx!
The exchange you just heard didn't actually happen, but it could. Bundle your home and other vehicles with Progressive and you could use the savings to make sure that RV is always ready to hit the road. Who knows, your teenager might actually put down her phone for 5 minutes. It could happen. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company, affiliates, and other insurers. Not available in all states.
Getting help with plumbing repairs is easier than you think. All you have to do is call Any Hour Services or schedule an appointment at anyhourservices.com. No one helps more homeowners than Any Hour Services.
Two friends taking pictures of the rising full moon on a summer night.
Two teenage kids doing what teenage kids do.
When a stranger with a gun and a death wish changed everything.
It was violent, it was senseless, and I will never understand it, I will never accept it.
I'm Amy Donaldson, and unfortunately, we're all too familiar with stories about how violence shatters lives. But what we rarely see is how they are rebuilt. In a new podcast, The Letter, we relive tragedy, but only so we can hear the rest of the story. The struggle to reclaim lives, the realities of grief, and the possibilities of forgiveness.
I believe in miracles. Sometimes I thought, there are no miracles. Yeah, there are, and this is a big one.
Follow The Letter at theletterpodcast.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Nikki Haley is in Utah today for a rally ahead of the Super Tuesday caucuses and primaries. Second, Mitch McConnell stepping aside as the Republican leader in the U.S. Senate. Third, the Utah legislature making changes in the plan to finance a Major League Baseball stadium. Right now, 38 degrees, partly cloudy in Salt Lake City. And back to Dave and Dujanovic on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Well, welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. We've been tracking, of course, former UN ambassador from the United States, Nikki Haley, has been here in the States. She's currently on stage down at the Norda Center at Utah Valley University in conjunction with the Herbert Institute, speaking to supporters down there. And she's had a very busy day here in the Beehive State. She was actually here at KSL News Radio earlier in the day. I had the opportunity to sit down and have a one-on-one conversation with the former ambassador, former governor of South Carolina. I'm going to share a little bit of that with you in this segment a little bit later on, and then you can see my entire sit-down interview with Nikki Haley coming up on Sunday edition on KSL 5 TV, 9 a.m. on Sunday morning. So you'll have lots of options to get into some of the things that you don't always hear from Nikki Haley, some of the things in terms of how she thinks, the way she approaches leadership, and some of those crucial conversations. We'll dig into all of that as we move along. We're going to go ahead and dip back in for just a second as she continues to speak there to a full house at the Norda Center on the campus of Utah Valley University.
Since Donald Trump became president in 2016, they lost the governor's mansion, they lost the state house, they lost the state senate. Then I went to Minnesota. Same thing. Since 2016, they've got the whole trifecta. They lost it all. Then I went to Colorado. Colorado hasn't had a Republican that's gotten more than 45% statewide since Donald Trump became president. Around the country, we aren't winning, we're losing. Donald Trump lost it for us in 2018. He lost it for us in 2020. He lost it for us in 2022. But look at a couple weeks ago. Republicans lost the vote on Israel. They lost the vote on the border. The RNC chair lost her job. and he had his fingerprints in all of that. At some point, if Republicans really want to get this back on track, we've got to acknowledge that maybe it's him. Maybe Donald Trump is the reason we keep losing.
That's former ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, making her case for the Republican nomination down at the Norda Center on the campus of Utah Valley University, of course, being hosted there by former Governor Gary Herbert, the Herbert Institute. And really interesting as you listen to that, of course, there's always several components to these kinds of things, which is always fascinating for me to watch as an observer of politics. You have kind of the governing component to all of this. You have the kind of the red meat rhetoric portion of the program. You have the policy discussions. You have the what you're for and what you're against, or who you're against portion of the program, which is what we just heard from Nikki Haley. And then you have this philosophical standpoint, which I think is the part that often gets overlooked in elections. Why? Because it's not quick, it's not easy, and it doesn't give you any good clickbait or any real divisive stuff that you can raise campaign cash off of. And so it often gets ignored and overlooked. But to me, that's the most important thing. If I want to think about who is going to be sitting behind the Resolute desk in the Oval Office on a big, important day in our country's history, I want to know how that person thinks. I want to know what principles animate them and get them out of bed in the morning. I want to know how they're going to lead a critical conversation with people they disagree with. But we don't serve up a whole lot of that, either in our debate formats or what gets covered on cable news, or the way headlines get written or things get reported in much of the national media. So I had the opportunity today to sit down with the former ambassador here in studio, and I got to ask her some of those questions. And I'm going to share a little bit of that with you as we go through the show today, and we'll also do that over the weekend on KSL5 TV. One of the things that I asked Ambassador Haley was that during her time as ambassador to the United Nations, I wanted to get to some of the lessons that she learned by watching the leaders of other countries. Here's how she responded.
Well, I think, first of all, we should know that we live in the best country in the world. But America's not going to be the best country in the world if we don't fight for her. You know, my husband, 8 months ago, left for another year-long deployment. And I watched him and 230 soldiers pick up their 2 duffel bags of belongings to go to a country they'd never been, all in the name of protecting America. They're willing to sacrifice their lives and their families because they still believe in this amazing experiment that is America. So if they're willing to sacrifice for us there, we need to be willing to fight for America here because we have a country to save.
Fascinating insight there from Nikki Haley in my sit-down conversation with her today. Also, it's always interesting in these settings, sometimes the hallway conversations are the best conversations, and you learn the most about someone, about what they choose to talk about when the cameras aren't rolling. So we were in the hallway in the studio, and we were having a conversation, and Nikki Haley talked about her time at the UN and talked about something that she did every week when she was the ambassador. And she talked about the threats, of course, from Russia and from China and other adversaries from around the world. But she said, you know, her husband and her every week would invite the ambassadors of Russia and China and other places around the world to come to their home for dinner. And when they came for dinner, it wasn't to talk geopolitics. It wasn't to debate democracy and freedom of the press or freedom of religion or anything else. It was to talk about their children and their grandchildren. It was to talk about their hobbies and their interests and what they read and why they care about certain things. Ambassador Haley said, and this was really, it was really stunning to me because it's so important. She said, look, even though we will have to fight with the ambassador to Russia, the ambassador from China, and we're going to have hard conversations, it's always better when you need to have a hard conversation with somebody to know who they are and to have a relationship with them so that when you do need to call them out on a really hard thing, you can do it from a position of strength because you have a relationship. Now, I think that applies every bit as much to a UN ambassador dealing with an ambassador from another country, I think the same thing applies to members of Congress from both of the major political parties. If they understand each other a little better, if they have more than transactions with one another, then when they have the big debates, they can have them with dignity, a dignity across their differences, a dignity for the humanity of the other person. And you have a very different conversation. So that was really insightful for me to watch Nikki Haley have that conversation in the hallway today about how she interacted with other ambassadors from around the world, especially from those of our enemies and those that we often are at odds with. It's important to look beyond just the headlines, the clickbait, the easy stuff. And we're going to continue to do that as we go through the show today. I'm going to share a little bit more of my conversation, my sit-down conversation with Nikki Haley. We'll continue to watch what's happening down on the campus of Utah Valley University and much, much more here on Inside Sources on KSL News Radio. We'll be right back.
It's 1:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. Nikki Haley spoke to a responsive crowd at Utah Valley University this afternoon. Former UN ambassador and South Carolina governor explained why she is still in the race for the Republican presidential nomination.
Why is she still running? Why is she doing this? Well, I think I've pretty much put aside the fact that I'm not trying to become vice president. And this is not about any sort of political career. If it was, I'd be out a long time ago. The reason this matters is, if you look at what's happening, this is a shift in the Republican Party.
Haley criticized former President Trump for saying he wouldn't defend NATO allies who weren't spending enough on their own militaries, said the country needs a president who knows the difference between right and wrong. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. An Idaho prison inmate convicted of multiple murders, one who's one of the nation's longest-serving death row inmates, was supposed to die today, but things did not go as planned. Here's ABC's Alex Stone.
Almost an hour after Thomas Creech was wheeled into the execution room, it was called off. A medical team tried to get an IV established to give him fatal drugs. They tried repeatedly in his arms, legs, and ankles, but they could not get a line. Then the execution was put on hold.
Creech's attorneys immediately filed a new motion for a stay in federal court. The Idaho Department of Corrections says it's considering its next steps. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average, the NASDAQ, both trending downward today. And our KSL weather will be sunny today and clouds build up over the next couple of days. That's next. KSL News Time, 1:31.
We hope you have the right app on your phone for news. You probably have dozens.
But the KSL News Radio app, well, it makes our live stream super easy.
Plus, our talk shows are right there as podcast for your workday.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
Be advised, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save 40 to 80% on a hot tub and swim spa. This weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Utah State Fair Park. Be advised, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save 40 to 80% on a hot tub and swim spa. This weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Utah State Fair Park. 18-month interest-free financing. Our factories have demanded we sell 1,000 hot tubs and swim spas this weekend. Utah State Fair Park. Huge factory incentives, factory rebates, this weekend only. Utah State Fair Park. We can remove your old hot tub. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Hot tub starting at $2,999. Utah State Fair Park. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Just relax and enjoy. Utah State Fair Park. Friday, noon to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Free admission, free parking, free delivery. Utah State Fair Park. Call 833-SPA-SALE or visit hottubandSwimSpaSale.com.
Hi, this is Doug Wright with yet another great experiment you can try right there at home. I want you to take 4 bags of water softener salt. Lift 3 of the bags with one hand, good luck on that, and 1 bag with your other hand. Now, if you're like most people, you'll probably find that 3 bags of salt weigh about 3 times as much as 1 bag of salt. And that's an important thing to keep in mind when you're shopping for a water softener. You see, Connecticut of Utah, an authorized Authorized Connecticut dealer, their water softeners are so well designed, they use only 1 bag of salt for every 3 that other water softeners use. Now, I can't speak for you, but I'm not a fan of lower back pain, and as our little experiment has hopefully demonstrated, carrying that 1 bag of salt, it's a lot easier on your back than carrying 3. That's just one of the many reasons you should look into water softeners from Connecticut of Utah, an authorized Connecticut dealer. To learn more, call Connecticut of Utah, 801-576-8600, or go to softwaterutah.com.
The Management Minute is a service of the MBA program in the John M. Huntsman School of Business at Utah State University. I'm Professor Scott Hammond. The pressure of winning is what a sports team is all about. One coach says stress builds character. But the best work teams are about persistence and endurance. Pressure is reduced. Stress is managed. Rescue teams, firefighters, police SWAT, surgical teams, most great work teams engage in what is called critical incident stress management. If they have a high-stress mission, something goes wrong, or it just builds up, they gather, discuss, and resolve, sometimes with the help of a trained facilitators. Learn more about what the best work teams do to manage stress and remain productive in an MBA from Utah State University. Go to utahstatemba.com. That's utahstatemba.com. I'm Scott Hammond. Hope to see you in one of our classes.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's Dino Pay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
We have a crash in Utah County on southbound I-15 at the Center Street Orem exit ramp. And right now, it's mostly only blocking a right lane of traffic. Big O Tires is your one-stop shop for tires and service. Now through March 17th, buy 3, get 1 free on select sets of tires. Big O Tires, the team you trust. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, sunny today, high 48. Clouds building up tomorrow and Friday as the temperature rises towards 60. Then a cold front brings rain and snow this weekend. Right now, we're at 43 degrees with sunny skies. I'm Dan Bomas from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Well, it is a big day for presidential politics here in the Beehive State, so we're going to stay with the presidential conversation, and we're going to break this into a couple of parts that I think are really interesting today. Obviously, the election cycle has already been polarizing, to say the least. And, of course, we've seen some interesting traction from third-party independent candidates and voters who want something other than a Biden-Trump 2.0 showdown. So we're going to do this in 2 parts. We're going to look at some of the things under the numbers, beyond the headlines, as it relates to the Trump campaign. And then later on in the show, we'll come and do the same with President Biden and his victory in Michigan, but also some of the disturbing under the numbers kind of questions that the administration is going to have to get to. So let's start with looking at the things underneath the hood when it comes to the former president and his bid to become the president once again. Brett Samuels, of course, is White House reporter for The Hill, covers the Biden administration, previously covered the Trump White House and breaking news for The Hill. And Brett, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me on.
So let's get underneath the numbers just a little bit. Of course, people have been saying, oh, the former president is 4-0 in the primaries, kind of this self-fulfilling prophecy of how these things get done these days. But you did an interesting look underneath because, as we always say on this show, it's one thing to win a primary in the spring. It's very different to win a general in the fall. And the fall is the only thing that matters in the end. Give us some of the things that you've been watching under the hood, even with these victories for the Trump campaign.
For sure. So to your point, it seems like the former president is pretty much on a glide path at this point to being the Republican nominee. So that's not really in question. But if you sort of dive into these numbers a little bit, look beyond, the net win in each of these states, there have been some potential warning signs, I think, if you look ahead to November for former President Trump. And you could find those really in sort of each of the first 4 contests, I think. You look at South Carolina last week, obviously it was a big resounding win over Nikki Haley, who was the former governor. But Nikki Haley, she certainly held her own. She pulled in, almost 40% of the vote. She performed better than Trump with college-educated voters. She performed better than Trump with more moderate voters. And again, in Michigan last night, we saw the former president with this very big, resounding victory. And yet, even though he's, by all, in name only, sort of the presumptive nominee, Nikki Haley still managed to get, about 30% of the vote. So clearly there are Republican voters who have concerns here, and that's something I think the Trump campaign, will have to keep an eye on as we look forward to November.
Yeah, I do think it's interesting, especially if Nikki Haley continues in the race. She said she'll be on and beyond Super Tuesday, and obviously that depends on momentum and money. Those are the two big drivers for a political campaign. But it does really show, I think, some of the challenges, I think, for the Trump campaign moving beyond if they do secure the nomination. Again, if we move forward into the fall, what do you see? What do you sense in terms of those independent voters and especially those swing states? I just thought Michigan was just fascinating yesterday for both President Biden and former President Trump in terms of a win is a win and is nice, and yet there are some things they ought to be thinking long and hard about.
Yeah, that's really well said. Both sides, I think, have some reflecting to do or some work to do between now and November based on the Michigan results. And Michigan, of course, is a state that Biden won by about 155,000 votes in 2020. So, we saw Biden, over 100,000 folks casted these uncommitted ballots last night. If all those voters either stay home in November or they flip to Trump in November, suddenly his margin is very small in Michigan. So, things like that really, really could matter come November. And those are the kinds of voters that President Biden will have to work on and bring back into the fold. And then conversely, as I said, about 30% of Republican primary voters backed Nikki Haley last night in Michigan. Now, some of those voters presumably will fall in line, back Trump once he's officially the nominee, and would not go for Biden. But again, in these swing states, New Hampshire could be a swing state, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, these states where if Trump is not able to win over more moderate Republicans, independent voters, the kinds of voters that he lost in 2020 after winning in 2016, in what is expected to be a really close election this November, those voters really could make a huge difference in some of these states.
I think one of the things that you pointed out, kind of along those same lines from your piece at thehill.com today, is the fact that the former president's been saying, look, the Republican Party's never been more unified. And yet, as you look at those numbers, those are pretty significant numbers, 30%, 40%. I always thought it was interesting, even in South Carolina, that former President Trump won in the general election against Hillary Clinton with about 56% of the vote in 2016. He beat then candidate Joe Biden in South Carolina by about the same number, 56, 57%. And now within a primary, only got to 59%. What does that tell you in terms of those who, as you pointed out, may fall back in line or go back into the fold, but might stay home in November?
Yeah, what it shows, I think, and what some Republicans have told me is that the former president hasn't really changed his message much. He's very much sort of the same candidate in a lot of ways that he was in 2020 when he lost to Joe Biden. So I think there is a concern among some Republicans that Trump is not doing enough to appeal to independent voters, to more moderate voters, to college-educated voters, the kinds of folks who were maybe a bit turned off by him after his first term, voted for Joe Biden in 2020. And Trump, arguably needs to do more to expand his voter base beyond just those loyal Republicans, the folks who are going to show up for him no matter what, because those are the voters who are really going to make a difference, especially in some of these key swing states by the time November rolls around. I think the other thing is that what Republicans have said, what Trump critics have said, what some Democrats have said, is that Trump is effectively running as an incumbent here. And so there are reasons to be concerned, if you look at it in that framing of an incumbent essentially for the Republican Party is losing, 30% of the vote and 40% of the vote in some of these states.
Yeah, fascinating stuff to watch. Former Ambassador Nikki Haley just completed a speech down on the campus of Utah Valley University, the Herbert Institute, and we'll continue to break that down as well. Brett Samuels, great piece at The Hill. Brett, of course, is White House reporter for The Hill, thehill.com. Brett, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, again, that's Brett Samuels, White House reporter for The Hill, and there are some very interesting undercurrents that the former president has to be looking at. We'll talk about some of the undercurrents that President Biden is facing as we get into hour number 2 of the program. We're going to go ahead and step aside for a quick break. When we come back, we're going to get some reaction to Ambassador Haley's speech at Utah Valley University from some of the students who were in attendance down there. Stay with us. More Inside Sources coming up next.
KSL Broadcast Group contests are open to participants 13 years of age and older that are residents of Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, and Nevada, unless otherwise specified. Employees or agents of the station, Bonneville International Corporation, or other area radio stations, or any entity associated with the contest may not enter. Persons who have won in the last 90 days from a station contest or event are not eligible. Full general contest rules are available at kslnewsradio.com.
If you only have a 401k, you're not getting the most for retirement.
Wait, what?
Add a Robinhood IRA on top, then they'll boost it by 3%.
You can do that?
And if you transfer in any retirement account, you get 3% on top of that.
Is there a limit to the match?
No limit. Robinhood Gold gets you the biggest contribution match of any IRA on the market. Sign up for Robinhood Gold at Robinhood.com/boost by April 30th. Subscription fees apply.
Investing involves risk. 3% match requires gold for 1 year from first match. Must keep IRA for 5 years. Match on transfers subject to additional terms and conditions. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC.
Asante came to TurboTax after graduating from culinary school and landing a job in the hottest kitchen in town.
My hands are full all day, every day. I love it.
Asante, as your TurboTax expert, I'll make your moves count, guaranteeing 100% accurate filing and your maximum refund. Sound good?
Yes, expert!
Switch to Intuit TurboTax and make your moves count. See guarantee details at turbotax.com/guarantees. Experts only available with TurboTax Live.
Put your phone on DND. That means that do not disturb when you're driving. And when you're going from point A to B, I need you to stay safe, please, so always sing with me. So put your phone on DND. That means that do not disturb when you're driving. And when you're going from point A to B, I need you to stay safe, please, so always remember this beat.
Don't drive distracted. A message brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Project Yellow Light, and the Ad Council.
I lock up my Old Spice Fiji aluminum-free dry spray to keep that 24/7 lasting freshness safe for myself. Fresh coconuts, palm trees in the wind. It's like catching waves in Fiji. Actually, I just talked myself into a refreshing spritz of Fiji. My Old Spice is missing! No!
This is Trent Reed with Ryan Valuation, formerly Economics Partners. We built one of the premier valuation firms in the country, then were acquired by Ryan Tax, for a great valuation, by the way. Now, as Ryan Valuation, we're the same top valuation practice with the resources of a global firm. Love him or hate him, or anything in between, if Trump had hired us, he wouldn't have New York claiming he owes them $354 million. I'm half kidding, but in all seriousness, there is no better team to hire for your valuation needs than my team. Whether you're an attorney needing help with litigation over a valuation matter, a business owner or executive needing your company valued for tax, financial reporting, or strategic reasons, a private equity partner needing valuation of your portfolio, or an accountant with a client needing a valuation, Ryan Valuation is the right call. We're headquartered here in Utah, but do our work nationwide. To hire the best, email us at valuations@ryan.com. That's valuations@ryan.com.
Victor deployed for the first time to Afghanistan in 2003. At 4 in the morning, my phone rang. They said, "I regret to inform you that your husband was wounded in action." Victor sustained a moderate traumatic brain injury. I was doing school full-time, and I was also then caring for Victor. One of the most important elements of caregiving is taking care of yourself. I just didn't want to forget that I also had goals and that I also had a life. What I did is I challenged Victor to meet me halfway. There are almost 6 million military and veteran caregivers across the nation. We have our own journey, and we can fulfill that journey at the same time that we are helping our loved one.
Visit aarp.org/caregiving for a free military veterans guide to navigate your caregiving journey and better care for your loved one and yourself. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Tim and Amanda.
Yes, KSL is a trusted institution. I mean, it's a 100-year-old institution, and I know that with that legacy comes a responsibility and a trust. But I want you to know, we have diverse voices at this radio station. Young people, we have people of all different ages, of all different cultural backgrounds, who put their 2 cents into what stories we cover from day to day, a voice that is given to those stories.
Well, I've been kicking around the Salt Lake City market for 40 years. I felt like I needed a decade of radio under my belt before I even attempted to climb that mountain. So as important as KSL is to you, you need to know that it's an important institution for both of us and something that we take very seriously, in the responsibility of providing the right news and information for you and your families every day and carrying on the tradition of this great radio station.
Utah's Morning News between 5 and 9 on KSL News Radio.
Do you worry about how much someone drinks?
Do you feel angry or depressed most of the time? Do you feel neglected or unloved?
Do you feel you attract people who tend to be compulsive or abusive?
Do you have money problems because of someone else's drinking?
Are you afraid or embarrassed to bring your friends home?
Do you feel that if the drinker loved you, she or he would stop drinking?
If you answered yes to any of these questions, you are not alone.
More than half of all adults have a family history of alcoholism.
Not everyone trapped by alcohol is an alcoholic.
Families and friends are suffering too. Al-Anon and Alateen can help. Call 1-866-200-0223 or visit alanon.org/help.
Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
Our goal every day on Inside Sources is to help you divide the rage from the reason, elevate the conversation, connect the dots, and make the news make sense in your world. We have conversations with great thinkers, with great leaders, and great people who are just out there making a difference in the world. Now, we do talk about politics, but only so we can discuss society and culture. And then we explore society and culture so we can discuss principles and the people in America and the state of Utah who actually live them and apply them every day. We bring the best and brightest minds to the state of Utah, and we love to take the Utah model and send it out to our nation's capital and beyond. Every day on Inside Sources, you'll be part of that conversation. To help you understand things in a different way, we'll get you to think again about what you think you know. But most important, we're going to help you have confidence to have crucial conversations in your community and in your own home.
Join Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson, 1 to 3 on KSL News Radio.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Nikki Haley held a rally at Utah Valley University this afternoon, hoping to keep her hopes alive for the Republican presidential nomination. Second, you won't have to wear as much orange when you're out in the woods during hunting season. And third, the state of Idaho failed to execute a convicted murderer today. Several attempts at a lethal injection just didn't work. Right now, 43 degrees and sunny in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Boyd Matheson divides rage from reason on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. Great to be with you today, as it always is. I am Boyd Matheson, and we're continuing on the presidential front. Obviously, a lot of presidential politics going on here in the state of Utah today, marching towards Super Tuesday. And just a reminder, whether you're a Democrat or Republican, you can vote and caucus on Tuesday, March the 5th, and that's up to all of us. If you don't like what you're getting or if you want something more, you should vote. That's your job. That's all of our jobs. And we can't sit on the sidelines and whine and complain about what we don't have or what we don't get if we don't show up and show out. And so that's up to all of us. Make sure you mark your calendars. Make sure you can cast a vote when it comes to caucus night for Democrats and Republicans, and a presidential preference poll on the Republican side. And, of course, former ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, has been here in the state of Utah. She wrapped up just about 10 minutes ago. down at Utah Valley University. And we want to get some reaction in terms of those who were in attendance down there at Utah Valley. And, of course, we always want to get some perspective on the younger voters and some of the students down there at Utah Valley University. Really pleased to have joining us on the line a Utah Valley University student. Mike Erickson is from Riverton. And, Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Boyd.
So you were there in attendance. You got to hear the former ambassador. Give us a top-line kind of takeaway. What was the message that you heard? What resonated with you?
Well, I was really pleased that Nikki would come to UVU. I think Utah sometimes, look past when presidents are campaigning and things. And, I thought that she talked a lot about the issues Republicans don't want to talk about. Talked about the debt, which I thought was, a really compelling issue that she talked about, as well as the need to support our allies abroad, especially in Israel and other places, and bringing people into, on our team and not dissuading people away from us. So I thought that was an important thing that she touched on.
Yeah, I did think that was interesting, and that has been very much part of her campaign to not just call out the other side of the political spectrum in terms of spending. She was what we like to do on this show. She was an equal opportunity offender, Democrats and Republicans alike, when it comes to the spending component. Real quickly, before I let you go, give us some perspective from a younger voter standpoint in terms of what are the younger voters, what are the students there on campus at Utah Valley University? What is the conversation? What are they looking for? What are they hoping for in this presidential election cycle?
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the conservative students on campus, we want to strike a balance between, yes, focusing on issues in America, domestic issues, policy issues, but also trying to understand what place America has in foreign conflicts. And I don't think it's the same when we're talking about Ukraine, talking about Israel, for lack of a better term, I think, conservatives at Utah Valley, want to have conversations about Social Security. We want to have conversations on the debt because this is a problem that we are facing, that we will face in the future. And, we're not afraid to make the big decisions. Great
point. I know you're in a room with some other students there. I'm going to have you pass the phone over to Parker Miller. I think Parker's in the room there. Parker is from Savannah, Georgia, and also a Utah Valley University student. And Parker, just give us a real quick hit. Give us one thing that was important to you that you heard from Ambassador Haley today.
Well, again, it was so awesome that she even came here to Utah Valley. It just shows the class and respect that the Herbert Institute shows in bringing high-profile speakers to UVU that let us show our voice and learn more and expand our worldview. Specifically, I love what Nikki Haley said to us, that we need to go back to normal. Politics nowadays are so divisive, so polarized. It's taking the younger generation. We don't want any part of it. It's too much. It's too divisive. And I love how she said we need to go back to normal. We need to talk about these things in a good manner.
Yeah, awesome. I'm going to have you pass the phone over to Keel Puga from Dallas, Texas, also Utah Valley University student. And give us your perspective in terms of, if you were advising the Haley campaign, what would you suggest that they focus more on based on what you heard at the rally today at Utah Valley University?
Well, my first thing is absolutely I loved that she even came. I think one of the big things that she pointed out was that politicians reflect the people that support them. And I think coming here and showing that the same thing is that she reflects our views and our values really means a lot to me and is a great reflection of the Herbert Institute, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think one thing that I love that she focused on, and I would love for her to focus on more as she continues, is her points towards she's doing her campaign for her kids for the people that she represents, for the generation that's coming up for America's future. And I think that's a strong vote that she's gonna have, and having that support of that new generation and giving us the support in the White House that we need now.
Okay, fantastic. I'm going to go to Royal Madison real quick. We just got about a minute to go, Royal. You get the last word. As you look at it, what is your message to young people here in the state of Utah and across the country in terms of engaging in this kind of presidential politics conversation?
Well, we need everybody. Everybody needs to be involved. Everybody needs to be engaged. And I love what Nikki says. If November comes along and you're upset with how this all went, it's your fault. We've complained too long, and if people are disgruntled about Joe Biden and Donald Trump, then they need to get out. They need to go vote. They need to go caucus, and they need to go get their friends involved. And that's the only way that this is going to change. Or in November, we're going to see the same matchup. And if it's the same matchup because people didn't get off their hands and go vote for Nikki Haley, it's their fault.
All right.
And they can complain about the person for the next 4 years.
All right. Great perspective from the students down at Utah Valley University. We'll continue to break all of this down. And I think Royal got it right. If you're going to complain, there's only one thing you need to do. Vote. Show up. Do your job. It's up to all of us, to each of us. If we want different, you got to vote different and not accept the status quo. That wraps up hour number 1. We'll be back with hour number 2 of Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. Stick around. We'll be right back.
KSL FM Midvale.
KSL Salt Lake City.
From the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios, this is KSL News Radio.
Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
It's 2 o'clock at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top story this hour. Nikki Haley wowed the crowd at Utah Valley University this afternoon, hoping to win more support in Utah's Super Tuesday caucuses next week. She warned her listeners against supporting former President Donald Trump.
Doesn't matter what he does, chaos just follows him. Everywhere he goes, chaos follows him. And we can't be a country in disarray and a world on fire and go through 4 more years of chaos. We won't survive it.
Haley pointed to her own qualifications as an accountant when she suggested the country needs more fiscal discipline. She promised to veto any bill that spends more than the government did before the COVID pandemic. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. President Biden went in for his annual physical today, and White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre says it did not include a cognitive test because she says doctors have determined he doesn't need one.
He passes a cognitive test every day, as he moves from one topic to another topic, understanding the granular level of these topics. You saw him talk about fighting crime today. Tomorrow he's going to go to the border. Next week he's going to give a State of the Union.
President Biden is 81 years old. Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average and both the NASDAQ as well, both down, trending downward as we approach the close of trading today. And our weather is going to be sunny today and clouds building up the next couple of days. That's next. KSL News Time 2:01.
It's a priority for us at this station to bring you all sides of a story and to talk about the news fairly, completely.
Get all the facts and be really aware. Utah's Morning News with us, Tim and Amanda.
Weekday mornings 5 to 9 on KSL News Radio.
Tim Jr. here from RGS Exteriors. And did you know that we get a bunch of service calls per year from people who didn't even hire us? That means they originally hired someone else to replace their siding, gutters, and windows. Then later, when a problem popped up, they tried to call their contractor back to fix it, only to find out that the contractor has ceased to exist. They're gone, done, out of business. At RGS Exteriors, we've been serving Utah for 70 years. As a fifth-generation owned contractor, we've got customers who are the grandkids of our customers we had in the 1950s and 60s. We're not going anywhere. We will be here when you need us, period. For siding, gutters, and windows, now and forever, call RGS Exteriors at 801-280-3110 or visit at rgsexteriors.com. That's 801-280-3110 or rgsexteriors.com.
Be advised, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save 40 to 80% on a hot tub and swim spa this weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Utah State Fair Park. Be advised, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to save 40 to 80% on a hot tub and swim spa this weekend only, Friday through Sunday, Utah State Fair Park. 18-month interest-free financing. Our factories have demanded we sell 1,000 hot tubs and swim spas this weekend. Utah State Fair Park. Huge factory incentives, factory rebates, this weekend only. Utah State Fair Park. We can remove your old hot tub. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Hot tub starting at $2,999. Utah State Fair Park. Free delivery of your new hot tub. Just relax and enjoy. Utah State Fair Park. Friday, noon to 8 p.m. Saturday, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Sunday, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Free admission, free parking, free delivery. Utah State Fair Park. Call 833-SPA-SALE or visit hottubandSwimSpaSale.com.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
Valley Freeway traffic rolling along and looking good. We are getting early reports of a possible accident, Redwood Road. We believe it's around 1100 south. We're trying to get more details and a confirmation on that. Crossroads of the West Gun Show comes to Ogden this weekend at the Weber County Fairgrounds. Get great deals on guns, ammo, plus you can buy, sell, or trade at the show. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
And our KSL weather, sunny today, high 48. Then clouds build up tomorrow and Friday as the temperature rises closer to 60. The cold front will bring rain and snow then coming up for the weekend. 45 degrees right now with mostly sunny skies. I'm Dan Bomis from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Inside Sources. Inside Sources. America's voice of reason. Boyd Matheson on Utah's home for elevated conversation. Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
That's a big day for presidential politics here in the state of Utah as we march our way towards Super Tuesday next week, and that's Utahns' opportunity to weigh in. Yesterday, of course, was the Michigan primary. And they have a little bit of a two-tier process there with a primary vote, which took place yesterday. They'll also have a convention happening over the weekend as they divvy up their delegates in the presidential race in particular. And as always, we want to go beyond just the headlines. Of course, it was another win for former President Trump and a resounding win for current President Joe Biden. But let's get underneath the hood and see if there are some things, even in victory, that might be a little worrisome. Let's begin.
Think you know the news of the day? Think again with Boyd Matheson on KSL News Radio.
So as we kind of think again about what we think we know about the presidential race, again, the headline, pretty easy. Biden wins Michigan, Trump wins Michigan. They're both inching their way closer to a rematch of their 2020 contest. But we always have to go beyond the headlines because there's a lot underneath there. You've heard me say on this show many times before that it's one thing to win a primary in the spring. It's a completely different thing to be able to win a general election in the fall. And in order to become the president of the United States, you actually have to do both. So you have to win the primary, you have to become the nominee, and you have to be able to win in the fall. And some of the things that took place yesterday in Michigan are worth noting. We spoke earlier in the show. We looked at the Republican side of the aisle and some of the weakness underneath the victory numbers for former President Trump. Some things that the Trump campaign clearly has to be concerned about, especially in a state like Michigan. In this segment, we're going to focus on thinking again about President Biden's victory yesterday. Again, a resounding win. No question that President Biden was going to win in Michigan yesterday. But underneath the hood, there are a lot of things that I think the Biden campaign is very nervous about as they look towards the fall. One of those things that is worrisome on many fronts for Democrats is the protest vote against the current president. You may remember Congresswoman Rashid Tlaib, one of the members of Congress, promoted this movement to vote uncommitted in the primary. Here's how she teed it up.
This is the way you can raise our voices. Don't make us even more invisible. Right now, we feel completely neglected and just unseen by our government. If you want us to be louder, then come here and vote uncommitted.
Former Congressman Andy Levin was another supporter of the push to vote uncommitted. He spoke on the show Democracy Now! About the message this sends to President Biden.
I think the significance of this is there's a danger that they see this as sort of like a political problem. We need to send surrogates. We need better messaging. No, this is war. This is the killing of tens of thousands of innocent people. The message from us to the president yesterday was, you must change course. You must change course for the sake of your political reelection and because it's the right and necessary thing to do.
So really interesting there. Again, a lot of these uncommitted, the protest vote, had to do with the way the president is handling things in the Middle East, particularly in Gaza, as it relates to the innocent Palestinian citizens in Gaza, and trying to send that message to President Biden and to the administration. I thought it was very interesting that the former congressman said, look, we don't need surrogates from the president's campaign to come tell us nice things. We want to have a conversation about policy and about doing things differently. That's an interesting message. Now, why does all of this matter? Well, because Michigan matters. Michigan has been a swing state for a long time. It is one of those keys to winning in the fall. Remember, that's what this is about. First Tuesday of November, who actually wins? And to show just how important it is, many of the experts and pundits, a lot of the inside sources were saying that this protest vote of uncommitted might be 10,000 people or so in the state of Michigan yesterday. Well, it went well over 100,000 people voted uncommitted yesterday on the Democratic side, uncommitted. Now, why does that matter? Well, let's go back. Let's go back to 2016. Donald Trump won the state of Michigan over Hillary Clinton by just 11,000 votes. That's how close it was, and that was crucial. Mr. Trump had to win Michigan in order to do that inside straight and become the president of the United States. He did that against Hillary Clinton, and Michigan was a key to that. He only won by 11,000 votes. 4 years later, Joe Biden flipped the script, and he beat then President Trump in Michigan by about 154,000 votes. So why does that matter? Well, if you take 100,000 Michiganders, I'm not sure what you call someone from Michigan. We better check that out. The Michiganders, that's what it's actually called. If you have 100,000 of those who are registered Democrats who voted, who showed up, these were people who didn't just stay home. We have no idea how many people just stayed home yesterday. But 100,000 plus people showed up in Michigan yesterday to cast a vote of uncommitted. Michigander, that's the proper term. Now we've got it. Thank you. Over 100,000 Michiganders showed up, made the effort to go to a polling location, and voted uncommitted. And then, of course, there were probably a number equal to that or more that just didn't even show up and vote at all. So what happens if all of those people stay home in November? That's a problem for President Biden and for the Democrats. In the same way, you've got those who voted for former President Trump, and you have about 30% who voted for Nikki Haley yesterday in Michigan. And will those who voted for Nikki Haley in Michigan yesterday, will they show up and vote for former President Trump? Or will they stay home? Or will they vote for a third-party candidate? So you can see underneath the numbers, while both Biden and Trump declared great victories, resounding victories yesterday, there's a lot they ought to be thinking again about when it comes to their campaign and actually connecting with the American people. And that's why we do the deeper analysis. That's why we look underneath the hood, because a lot of these things, if you only looked at the headlines, you say, oh, this is all over, this is all done. We're doomed and ready for another Biden-Trump 2.0, and everything's cast in stone and everything is set. But it shouldn't be. And regardless of who you're for or who you're against, That seems to be driving a lot of the political conversations these days, not who you're for, but who you're against, which is never a great way to cast a vote, by the way. We'll talk about that later. But that is an important one. You got to be for things. You can't just be against things. And that's why we need more options. That's why we need more debate. That's why we need more conversations about real principles, real policies. How do these folks make decisions? How will they approach tough days sitting behind the Resolute desk in the Oval Office? Because those are the things that we deserve real answers on. And we're going to continue to try to find those here on Inside Sources. And again, on a day when there's a lot of presidential politics going on, stick around through the remainder of the program. Coming up at 2:50, I'll share a little bit more of my sit-down conversation with former Ambassador Nikki Haley. We had a chance to sit down in the studio today and have a conversation about some things beyond just the headlines and the usual talking points. We'll share some of that with you, as well as what will come up on Sunday on KSL 5 TV on Sunday edition. So stay with us. Much more to think about, much more to think again about when it comes to presidential politics right here on Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Think again on Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
Our lives are full of choices these days.
Some are less important.
Look at all these shows and movies. I don't know what to watch.
But other choices are key to the way we understand the world and our place in it.
When you select KSL, listening on Alexa or in the car,
You've made the right choice.
you could choose to do nothing. You could opt out.
So thank you for engaging, for choosing this station.
KSL News Radio.
This is Trent Reed with Ryan Valuation, formerly Economics Partners. We built one of the premier valuation firms in the country, then were acquired by Ryan Tax, for a great valuation, by the way. Now, as Ryan Valuation, we're the same top valuation practice with the resources of a global firm. Love him or hate him, or anything in between, if Trump had hired us, he wouldn't have New York claiming he owes them $354 million. I'm half kidding, but in all seriousness, there is no better team to hire for your valuation needs than my team. Whether you're an attorney needing help with litigation over a valuation matter, a business owner or executive needing your company valued for tax, financial reporting, or strategic reasons, a private equity partner needing valuation of your portfolio, or an accountant with a client needing a valuation, Ryan Valuation is the right call. We're headquartered here in Utah, but do our work nationwide. To hire the best, email us at valuations@ryan.com. That's valuations@ryan.com.
When was the last time you gave your carpet the love and attention it really deserves? Not only is your carpet one of the biggest investments in your home, but it's also the biggest air filter in your home. If your carpet hasn't been professionally cleaned, you're breathing in all sorts of nasty dirt, dander, and germs that keep recirculating again and again. Lucky for you, Zerorez is going to spread the love to you and your home with their February special. Don't think vacuuming or DIYing will suffice. Call the pros. Zerorez has over 7,400 Google reviews with a 4.8 rating. This month, it's $33 per room cleaned, plus a fourth room free with promo code 4FREE24. And don't forget about your air ducts. Take $50 off your air duct cleaning with promo code CLEAN-AIR. Call Zerorez, 866-ZEROREZ, or online at zerorez.com and say you want the KSL special. Zerorez. Spelled backwards or forwards, it's the right way to clean.
For the ones who work hard to ensure their crew can always go the extra mile, and the ones who get in early so everyone can go home on time, there's Grainger, offering professional-grade supplies backed by product experts so you can quickly and easily find what you need. Plus, you can count on access to a committed team ready to go the extra mile for you. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Ew, gotta get rid of this old Backstreet Boys t-shirt.
Tell me why.
Because it stinks, boys.
Tell me why.
I've washed it so many times, but the odor won't come out.
Tell me why.
No, you tell me why I can't get rid of this odor.
Have you tried Downy Rinse and Refresh? It doesn't just cover up odors, it helps remove them.
Wow, it worked, guys.
Downy Rinse and Refresh removes more odor in one wash than the leading value detergent in 3 washes. Find it wherever you buy laundry products.
Any Hour Services can help you make sure your furnace keeps you warm this winter. Whether you need a tune-up, a repair, or a second opinion about replacing it, call Any Hour Services or visit anyhourservices.com.
37,000, 25, 1. These are the 3 numbers to remember to get the visibility and control you need to make the right business decisions instantly. 37,000. That's the number of businesses which have upgraded to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, streamlining accounting, financial management, inventory, HR, and more. 25. NetSuite turns 25 this year. That's 25 years of helping businesses do more with less, close their books in days, not weeks, and drive down expenses. 1. Because your business is one of a kind, so you get a customized solution for all of your KPIs in one efficient system with one source of truth. Manage risk, get reliable forecasts, and improve margins. Everything you need to grow, all in one place. Right now, download NetSuite's popular KPI checklist, designed to give you consistently excellent performance absolutely free at netsuite.com/company. That's netsuite.com/company to get your own KPI checklist. netsuite.com/company.
Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson.
When we're trying to digest the news of the day, we have to remember that instant certainty is the enemy of truth. A flashy headline may distract you from the real issue and the important conversations underneath.
Inside Sources with Boyd Matheson, 1 to 3 on KSL News Radio.
With the 3 things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Nikki Haley owned the crowd at Utah Valley University today, but she's still running well behind former President Trump as Super Tuesday approaches. Second, Utah Senator Mike Lee congratulated Senator Mitch McConnell on his long tenure as the Republican leader in the Senate, but said he hopes McConnell will spend the remaining time working on border security. And third, President Biden got his annual physical today, but the 81-year-old president didn't get a cognitive test. His press secretary says he doesn't need one. 45 degrees and sunny right now in Salt Lake City. Back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Get deeper insights on the news from Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. It's great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson, and as we continue the conversation, I have been looking forward to this conversation all day today because any headline that says the vibe session will continue is one we have to dig into, and it's one of those that we've talked a lot about in terms of the disconnect between where the economy is and much of what the Biden administration is saying and where the American people actually are or feel they are. And it's just not congruent. And we actually have a word for it now and an explanation. And so we always turn to Eric Bain from Reason. And this is the great piece of the day. You need to read this at reason.com. The vibe session will continue. And Eric, welcome back to the show. And I know you did your homework on this. You went all the way back to the 1840s and astronomers. Give us the background and why we are suddenly in a vibe session.
Well, it's good to be here, Boyd, as always. Thank you for having me. At the risk of alienating some people, I think, at the top of this piece, I compared the current economic situation to how we discovered the planet Neptune back in the 1840s. So the astronomers knew about the planet Uranus, but they also knew that it wasn't behaving the way they thought it should. There was like a weird wobble in its orbit. And so thanks to, some complex math and understanding of how gravity works, thanks to Isaac Newton, they were able to theorize that there might be another planet out there that was pulling on it a little bit, and that would explain this wobble. And then they pointed their telescopes where they thought that camera would be, where the math told them that planet should be, and boom, there it was. And that's sort of the situation that economists are in right now too, where we've got you have unemployment data, you have inflation data, and those two things generally give you a pretty good snapshot of how the American people should feel about the economy. Economic sentiment tracks those two factors. But there's a weird wobble happening, right? There's some sort of influence that we're not capturing from what we know because the economic sentiment, I don't have to tell you, is quite low at the moment. People don't really like it. There's this, this vibe out there of that the economy is having a bad time.
but the unemployment numbers suggest that shouldn't be true. Inflation, was bad, but it's come down. That shouldn't be true anymore. And so, this piece was an attempt kind of taking a stab at explaining what that mystery planet out there might be. What's causing that wobble.
All right, let's unpack the weird wobble just a little bit further, because as you said, the inflation rates have been going down, though not down as much as a lot of American peoples would like around their kitchen table. Unemployment and so on, kind of this idea of the soft landing seems to at least be in the realm of possibility in terms of moving forward. And so talk to us about the weird wobble. Is it the fact that there was so much conversation and so many messages put out by President Biden and the administration in terms of how happy we should all be and that it's just not the reality to what people are living? How do we explain the weird wobble?
Yeah, so my answer until a week ago, my answer would have been that this is just the remnants of inflation. People are just still kind of grumpy about inflation because, inflation rates have fallen, but that doesn't mean prices came down, right? It just means they're rising quickly. And so there's just kind of a residual, unhappiness about that. Then I saw this paper, a paper by Larry Summers, who's an economist at Harvard University, two of his colleagues at Harvard, and another economist at the International Monetary Fund. And in this paper, they theorized that what's actually causing this, the hidden planet there, if you will, is high interest rates. And it's the fact that it's not just that the money in your wallet doesn't go as far as it once did. It's that if you have to borrow money to make a big purchase, buy a house, buy a car, even just pay off, the money that you're paying off your credit card bill with, all of that is more expensive. It's much more expensive to borrow now than it was a few years ago. Obviously, higher interest rates is connected to inflation. It's connected to all of these other issues. But that's something that economists don't generally look at when they think about, political economic sentiments and the way that reflects onto things like a president's approval rating. And so what you end up with is, basically there's this other factor, the fact that we do still have high interest rates. So, as I said at the top of the piece, really, I think the vibe session, this feeling that we're not necessarily in a recession, but this kind of negative feeling surrounding the economy is going to continue until interest rates come down, because that's the thing that's the one gravitational field that's still kind of holding back the economy, the sense of the economy.
Oh, it's so interesting. I want to jump to one other component that you mentioned towards the end of your piece at Reason.com in this vibeflation category, and that is this thing called referred pain. I think it's so interesting. Despite the partisanship, the distrust, all of those other things that are out there, there is sort of this thing, not just what's happening around my kitchen table, but what I sense is happening around my neighbors or my good friend's kitchen table, or how they're struggling with things. That also seems to be kind of playing into this wobble and this kind of funky vibe that people are sensing.
Yeah, I think that's definitely part of it. That's something that these economists point to in the paper, as you said. I think it's just the general sense of, you have conversations with people and this is what's on everybody's mind, right? Is, well, things cost more at the grocery store. Well, maybe I had to put off buying a new car that I got to go fix, my old car again. I'd really like to get a new one, but I just can't afford the car payments right now. Average car payment in this country is $200, roughly $200 higher than it was in 2019. Like that's a significant strain on a monthly budget. And certainly if you're going from, not having a car payment, thinking about, in making that, leap, that's a big one. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about, the housing situation and mortgage rates. All of that is tied up in interest rates as well. So, it's this combination of factors. It's that, as I said before, it's not just that the money in your wallet doesn't go as far as it used to. It's that, the money that's not in your wallet, the money you got to go to the bank to get to make a big purchase, that money now costs you a whole lot more. And I think that just makes it feel like certain big purchases are maybe a little more out of reach. Maybe the monthly budget just doesn't stretch as far as it did. And all of that is the result of interest rates. And so this is, to me, ultimately, this is another lesson about inflation because we have these higher interest rates as a way to combat the inflation that we were dealing with a couple of years ago. And it's just another reason why the idea that we can run the economy hot, or the idea that it's okay to have some inflation if we're spending money to help people, which is an idea that you heard a lot in Washington during the pandemic and even before it. That idea is really been, I think, debunked pretty thoroughly by the last few years, and continues to be, because there's these long-term consequences that policymakers really were not prepared for.
Yeah, and no matter how you slice and dice the intergalactic, whatever it is of it all, the weirdness of it all, the vibe session is a real thing. And to Eric's point, it is exactly the absolute predictability of consequences. And that is why where we are when it comes to the finances, why things running hot, and then you have to raise the inflation rate to deal with the inflation rate. And that's a pretty brutal and a pretty vicious cycle, especially when you take it all the way back to the kitchen table. And, of course, that will have political impact as well. Eric Boehm, reporter at Reason. Always turn to Eric for our intergalactic news. And now we have a new word of the day, vibe session, that's going to continue until interest rates fall. Eric, as always, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks so much for having me, Boyd.
All righty, and that's Eric Boehm, one of our favorites from Reason.com. And you should go check out his piece today, The Vibe Session. It is going to continue because that's what the American people are living. And it doesn't matter what political rhetoric gets spewed out there, whether it's by the Biden administration or by any contestant running for any office on the Republican side. If they're saying everything is great and wonderful and we should be happy at all of these good numbers, and we should be happy about all the good numbers, it's just not the reality in terms of how far the dollar goes, how hard it is to fill up the tank of gas, how hard it is to get the groceries, all of those things, and then the borrowing, how expensive it is to borrow to make some of those big purchases. All of that plays in. It's all part of the process, and it is a vibe session. Look it up, Reason.com today. Big thanks to Eric Boehm, as always. We'll step aside for some bottom-of-the-hour news. When we come back, big breaking news out of Washington, D.C., end of an era, as Mitch McConnell will step down as the minority leader come November. We'll talk about that coming up next on Inside Sources.
It's 2:30 at KSL News Radio. I'm Dan Bomas. KSL's top local story this hour. Nikki Haley spoke to a supportive crowd at Utah Valley University this afternoon, warning them that chaos follows her Republican opponent wherever he goes. Former UN ambassador and governor of South Carolina also drew a contrast between herself and another potential Democratic candidate.
We will have a female president of the United States. The hard truth is, it's either going to be me or Kamala Harris.
Haley is running well behind former President Trump going into the primaries and caucuses on Super Tuesday next week. Lawmakers looking at reducing the amount of blaze orange hunters are required to wear. Riley Peck with the Utah Division of Wildlife Resources says because hunting's made a lot of safety improvements over the past decade.
We are not seeing many, if any, over the last few years of these hunting accidents that a hunter orange may help eliminate.
A new bill would change the requirements from 400 square inches of orange to just one main piece of clothing. Our top national story this hour from ABC News. The House Speaker says they won't shut down the government this week. They only have a couple of days left to make sure that doesn't happen. ABC's Andy Field has the latest from Washington.
He has made deals with Democrats 3 times to keep the government open since last fall. It appears the Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson will have to do that again this week.
We'll make decisions this afternoon.
If the Speaker needs Democratic votes again to keep the government open, it could threaten his speakership. A similar compromise cost Speaker Kevin McCarthy his job. Andy Field, ABC News, Washington.
Your money at this moment, the Dow Jones average closing trading today down 23 points. NASDAQ down 87. The S&P 500 was down 8. And our KSL weather, sunshine today, then clouds build up the next couple of days. KSL News Time, 2:32.
Here's a way to get breaking news updates anywhere you go.
At the store or in a work meeting, you can get breaking news on your phone.
You can quickly read it, swipe, or click for more. It's super discreet, super fast.
That's the app for KSL News Radio.
At this time of year, isn't it great to have something to look forward to? There's something about January and February. You've just got to have that thing on the calendar you're so looking forward to. Might I recommend dinner at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse? Let's talk about Hotel Park City. That's where you're going to find Ruth's Chris Steakhouse up in Summit County. After a day of skiing, it is the perfect way to wrap up that perfect day at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. And then, of course, right in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City, we have a Ruth's Chris Steakhouse here as well, right in the middle of all the action. So whether it's a play, a ball game, whatever it might be, that delicious dinner, it's waiting for you at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. Plus, it's only fair to remind you that Valentine's Day now is just around the corner, and your sweetheart is going to love that amazing meal. Ruth's Chris Steakhouse, 275 Southwest Temple, and also Hotel Park City. The meal you're waiting for, it's waiting for you at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse.
I'm author Richard Paul Evans. My wife once told me that I share too much. I probably do, but maybe that's why I've had 46 consecutive New York Times bestsellers. It's also why I've named my new book Sharing Too Much, Musings from an Unlikely Life. Sharing Too Much is a private look into my thoughts on love, marriage, the world, and life as a writer. For my readers, you'll get to know me more intimately, the husband, father, and the writer behind the books and movies that have inspired millions worldwide. The national reviews have been great. She Reads writes, a most anticipated anthology. Evans' wise insight and powerful advice is the gift that keeps on giving. Kirkus writes, Evans shares a half-century of ruminations, succinct musings meant to inspire. Sharing Too Much contains 59 essays, including How I Saved My Marriage, which had more than 100 million readers worldwide. Sharing Too Much by Richard Paul Evans. On sale now at your nearby bookstore or online. Also available in audiobook and ebook.
Hey, have you saved more than $200,000 in an IRA or 401k? You may not realize it now, but you've got a big problem on your hands. And that problem is taxes. Because if you don't take advantage of some tax planning strategies now, Uncle Sam could take a big chunk of your hard-earned retirement savings. Learn how you could reduce the taxes on your IRA and 401k with a free retirement tax savings analysis. It's from Boss Retirement Solutions. If you've saved more than $200,000, schedule your free tax strategy session now by calling 801-896-9622. Discover the tax planning strategies that could dramatically reduce your taxes in retirement. Call 801-896-9622. That's 801-896-9622.
Advisory services offered through Boss Retirement Advisors, an SEC-registered investment advisory firm. Insurance products and services offered through Boss Retirement Solutions.
Traffic and weather together brought to you by Sinclair's DinoPay app. Save up to 20 cents per gallon. Here's Ricky Meese.
We have a crash on the freeway in the Salt Lake area of Salt Lake County. It's southbound I-15 prior to 1300 South, involving two trucks on the right shoulder. Beatty, Nevada, your adventure home base for any season. Gateway to Death Valley National Park, canyon, and desert trails. Perfect for off-road hiking and biking, ghost towns, mines, and more. BeattyNevada.org. Ricky Meese in the KSL Traffic Center.
KSL weather, sunshine all through the rest of the day, high 48. Clouds build up tomorrow and Friday as the temperature rises towards 60. Then a cold front brings rain and snow this weekend. Right now, 45 degrees, partly cloudy. I'm Dan Bomis from the KSL Common Spirit Health Studios. Listen online at kslnewsradio.com. We're Utah's news, traffic, and weather station.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Well, in the surprise political announcement of the day, on the floor of the United States Senate, Republican Minority Leader Mitch McConnell announced that he will be stepping down from his role from Senate leadership after the November election. Mitch McConnell just turned 82 years of age and last year became the longest-serving Senate leader in the nation's history. So as he took to the floor of the United States Senate today, his message to his colleagues, his message to the American people was interesting. He's been whether you love or hate, agree or disagree with Mitch McConnell, he has been a towering and a long-standing presence and figure in American politics did much to shape where the Senate is today and the political landscape in the country in general. So I want to go to a few of the excerpts from Senator McConnell's speech today, because I think there are some things that are worth noting and worth remembering as we reflect on his time as both the majority leader and as the minority leader there in the Senate. And again, regardless of whether you love him or hate him, for or against, the one thing that I will say, I had disagreements with Mitch McConnell on a host of things when it came to policy, when it came to strategy. The one thing you can never question about Mitch McConnell was his commitment to the institution of the Senate. He cares about it. It means something to him. The institution means something to him, and I think that's something we're losing in a lot of our conversations around the country today. So from the well of the Senate today, Senator McConnell expressed thankfulness and gratitude for his time in the Senate and, as I mentioned, for the work of the institution of the Senate.
I love the Senate. It's been my life. There may be more distinguished members of this body throughout our history, but I doubt there were any with any more admiration for the Senate. After all this time, I still get a thrill walking into the Capitol, and especially on this venerable floor, knowing that we have the honor to represent our states and do the important work of our country.
Senator McConnell also continued his advocacy for the role of America as a leader on the globe stage and why that still matters today.
I'm unconflicted about the good within our country and the irreplaceable role we play as the leader of the free world. I believe more strongly than ever that America's global leadership is essential to preserving the shining city on a hill that Ronald Reagan discussed.
So as we look at that legacy of Senator Mitch McConnell, it was really interesting. This was a moment in his speech in the well of the Senate today that was really surprising to me. No one really saw this coming. I didn't hear any rumblings coming out of anywhere. So this was not something that was well known. I don't think it was particularly planned out by Senator McConnell. And he alluded to that. He said as he mulled the decision, he said he came to a moment of clarity that prompted him to make the announcement not later, but now.
So as I've been thinking about when I would deliver some news to the Senate, I always imagined a moment when I had total clarity and peace about the sunset of my work. A moment when I'm certain I have helped preserve the ideals I so strongly believe. That day arrived today.
So that's an interesting moment of clarity for him to say that he wasn't sure when he was going to step down, but he wanted to make sure that he did have that opportunity to have that moment of clarity and to do it on his terms, in his way, and he did that today. Now, I think it's also interesting and important to note that he is going to stay on as the minority leader through the November election. I think this is interesting strategy from Mitch McConnell, and if nothing else, Mitch McConnell is a tactician when it comes to navigating the Senate. He's done it incredibly well. That's why he's maintained power for so long. I think this gives him some interesting wiggle room. He's clearly had his problems with former President Trump. But now, as someone who is going to be exiting after the election, I think it probably gives Mitch McConnell some room to be a little more critical and a little more open, a little more outspoken when it comes to things that the former president does or doesn't do in the course of the campaign. I think that's interesting. We'll keep our eye on that. Mitch McConnell also said formally on the Senate floor that he will officially step down, not now, and that he's not going anywhere, but he will step down as GOP leader come November.
So I stand before you today, Mr. President, and my colleagues, to say this will be my last term as Republican leader of the Senate. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. However, I'll complete my job my colleagues have given me until we select a new leader in November.
And then finally, as he closed out his speech in the well of the Senate today, Mitch McConnell quoted another American statesman, Henry Clay. He reflected on the enduring work that the Senate does not just now, not just in the political realm of the today and what's urgent, but things that actually matter for the future generations of America.
As Henry Clay said in this very body in 1850, the Constitution of the United States was not made merely for the generation that then existed, but for posterity. Unlimited, undefined, endless, perpetual posterity.
Always good to quote Henry Clay in the well of the United States Senate going back to 1850. And I think that's an important one that I wish more of our elected officials in Washington, D.C. would reflect on a daily basis. And that is that the current Congress, the current members of the Senate, are not there just to deal with the current problems and for the current body politic. They're there because the decisions they make will impact generations to come, unlimited, unbound, and those decisions actually matter. So again, very much a surprise move today, a surprise announcement coming from the Minority Leader, Mitch McConnell, has had an iron grip on the Republican side of the aisle in the United States Senate for a very, very long time, a historic run by Senator Mitch McConnell. Again, love him or hate him, he was a tactician of the Senate, and whether you liked him or not, he loved the Senate and the institution of the Senate. Didn't see it just as a platform, but he saw it as a responsibility that everybody had. All right, we'll step aside for one last break. We'll come back and round out our day of presidential coverage here in the Beehive State, coming up on Inside Sources on KSL News Radio. We'll be right back.
If cabinets were a football team, Euromax cabinets would be the 1985 Bears, maybe the 1984 Niners. If cabinets were a basketball team, Euromax would be the 95-96 Bulls, maybe the 2016-2017 Warriors. If cabinets were a singer, Euromax cabinets would be Neil Diamond, rhinestones, sequins, and all. In fact, Neil Diamond was probably thinking about Euromax cabinets when he wrote and recorded Sweet Caroline. Max and Mike came together to start a cabinet company that brings the unique flair and style of Europe while keeping the craftsmanship and installation of America. Max moved here from Ukraine with years of European style, while Mike has 25 years of cabinet experience here in Utah. This is Hans Olsen, letting you know their service, style, and warranties are unmatched. They can help you design a kitchen to be the talk of the neighborhood. Their showroom's in Pleasant Grove, and you can see their world-class design by going to EuromaxFurniture.com. That's EuromaxFurniture.com. Euromax, built for you.
It's a mystery where Old Spice finds its amazing scents like Himalayan sea salt, but I'm thrilled they have because no other body wash exfoliates and moisturizes 24/7 like Old Spice Gentleman's Himalayan sea salt body wash. Now, if only there was a mountain range separating the Indian subcontinent from the Tibetan plateau where I could hide my Old Spice and keep my family from stealing it, my impossibly smooth skin will finally be safe.
I am James, Senior Apparel Designer, and this is Behind the Design with Hawks. Hawks is your classic workwear brand. It's designed for those guys that are on the job site. Just driven performance, just rugged and comfortable. Thinking of durability, everything is either double, triple stitched, bar tacked. It's build durable, it's going to perform, it's going to move with you, it's going to have everything that you need in a product. Hawks, only at Boot Barn.
Going to a Jazz game is more fun together. Host an unforgettable night at Delta Center with colleagues, friends, families, whoever. Group tickets are the best way to get everyone together to cheer on the Jazz. Pick from a variety of options for seating, dining, and game day experiences. Start planning your big night at the game by calling 801-355-DUNK, emailing group sales at utahjazz.com, or simply visiting utahjazz.com/tickets.
Are you stressing about your IRS tax problems? Have you received notices from the IRS threatening to garnish your wages, levy your bank accounts, or seize your property? You need an ally. Allies Tax Relief has tax attorneys and enrolled agents that are ready to fight for you. They have saved millions for taxpayers just like you. Allies Tax Relief can help put a stop to IRS collections and, most importantly, negotiate your tax debt. Here's Brenda, a happy client of Allies Tax Relief.
I owed the IRS around $57,000, and they're about to start garnishing my paychecks. I heard a commercial on the radio about Ally's tax relief, so I thought I'd give them a call. After a day, they were able to at least stop the garnishments, and after a few months of negotiations, I walked away owing the IRS only $301.
If you owe the IRS, call Allies Tax Relief right now for your free consultation. Call 800-230-5174. 800-230-5174. That's 800-230-5174.
Maybe it's because they're excited about Leap Day at the end of February. This is Jeff Kaplan. At Advanced Window Products, Leap Day means they get an extra day to build windows. But for you, it's an incredible opportunity. This month, they'll give you $2,500 off on 10 windows or more. $2,500 off on the highest quality custom window frames and double pane glass. They'll lower your energy bill and give your home an exciting new look. Any style, any color. At Advanced Window Products, you save money because they cut out the middleman. They build your windows right here in Salt Lake City. They install the windows and they guarantee them for life. So beat the rush. Once it gets warmer, their schedule backs up and you have to wait months and months for installation. So make the call and get to the head of the line. Save $2,500 and get custom precision windows built right here in Salt Lake City. Advanced Window Products offers 60-month 0% financing. You can buy now, pay later, but call now. 801-850-9100. 801-850-9100 or visit AdvancedWindowsUSA.com.
The life of a small business owner. Keeping the lights on, calling all the shots, and then there's workplace accidents. 500-degree ovens, rusty nails. Danger lurks around every corner. Workplace accidents can happen, but there is an easy way to keep your employees covered. Talk to your agent about workers' comp coverage from PIE, or go to pieinsurance.com and get a quote. Safety first, then PIE Insurance. Individual rates, offerings, and savings may vary, subject to policy terms and conditions. Not available in all states and situations.
This is Trent Reed with Ryan Valuation, formerly Economics Partners. We built one of the premier valuation firms in the country, then were acquired by Ryan Tax, for a great valuation, by the way. Now, as Ryan Valuation, we're the same top valuation practice with the resources of a global firm. Love him or hate him, or anything in between, if Trump had hired us, he wouldn't have New York claiming he owes them $354 million. I'm half kidding, but in all seriousness, there is no better team to hire for your valuation needs than my team. Whether you're an attorney needing help with litigation over a valuation matter, a business owner or executive needing your company valued for tax, financial reporting, or strategic reasons, a private equity partner needing valuation of your portfolio, or an accountant with a client needing a valuation, Ryan Valuation is the right call. We're headquartered here in Utah, but do our work nationwide. To hire the best, email us at valuations@ryan.com. That's valuations@ryan.com.
With the three things you need to know this hour, I'm Dan Bomas. First, Nikki Haley told the crowd at Utah Valley University this afternoon that the United States could soon have a woman president, but it might be the current Vice President, Kamala Harris. Second, Senator Mitch McConnell says time for him to step down as Republican leader in the Senate. And third, Congress is approaching another deadline to fund the federal government. Any compromise right now lies in the hands of House Speaker Mike Johnson. 45 degrees, partly cloudy right now in Salt Lake City. And back to Inside Sources on KSL News Radio.
Hear elevated conversation on crucial issues. Boyd Matheson on Inside Sources.
Welcome back to Inside Sources here on KSL News Radio. Great to be with you today. As always, I am Boyd Matheson. As we round out the program today, of course, a lot of presidential politics going on. You had the primary in Michigan yesterday. You've got Super Tuesday coming up in less than a week, which will, of course, include the state of Utah. Former Ambassador Nikki Haley here in the state of Utah speaking today, and a host of other things going on politically, including Mitch McConnell stepping down as the leader for the Republicans in the United States Senate after an historic run, long run there in the Senate. But as we round everything out, as we close up the show today, a couple of things I want to get past just the headline pieces. I mentioned as we started the show today that typically on a day like today, where you have candidates in town, you have a lot of presidential news going on, there's things that are always happening. You have the kind of the political rhetoric that's going on, the who you're against, who you're for kind of thing. You also have the policy realm, which often gets avoided on days like today. You get some of the traditional rally kinds of things, going to the base of a political party, trying to motivate people to get out and actually vote. And then there's other conversations that are a little more substantive, that are kind of beyond just the predictable kinds of answers and the predictable kind of campaign rhetoric. And that's where I want to close out the show today. Now, I had the opportunity earlier today, right here at KSL, to sit down one-on-one with former Ambassador Nikki Haley. And we talked about a wide range of things. The full interview you can see on Sunday on KSL 5 TV on Sunday edition at 9 a.m. But I want to give you a couple of snippets from that conversation that are a little bit under the headlines in terms of what's going on and where we actually need to state and take conversations, especially nationally, and then what our role is locally as well. Also, it's the hallway conversations. I love the hallway conversations because it is often where you learn the most about people running for high office. But in my sit-down conversation with Nikki Haley, we talked about some of the newer isolationist tendencies within the Republican Party, saying that America cannot stay successful without our friends, which I think is a really important thing as we look at this America first, America best. What does it mean here in America and around the world?
You also look at the shift in the fact that we used to believe our national security was about peace through strength. And now you see that it's started to become more isolationist.
Yeah.
America can never be so arrogant to think we don't need friends.
Yeah.
After 9/11, we needed a lot of friends. This is a time where we need to decide, do we want more of the same, which is what we're getting with Donald Trump and Joe Biden, or do we want to go in a new direction? Yeah. I think it's time we go in a new direction.
So we have to have friends. America needs friends around the world because that's how freedom continues to be extended around the world. It's not about being the country's and the world's policeman. It's not about being involved in all of those things, but it is about creating relationships. And it was one of the things that stood out in my conversation with the former ambassador was the lengths that she went to create friendships, even with many of our adversaries, like China and Russia, that you still have to have relationships. I think that's important in terms of our conversation. As we talked about her campaign, she's been at this for over a year now. And I have always said that real leaders are forever learners. And I asked Ambassador Haley what she's learned from the American people as she travels the country, as she talks to people from all walks of life. She gave a pretty poignant answer. Take a listen.
And I go and I see what the American people are saying, and I think they feel the fragility. When you listen to them, they don't talk about political talking points, and they don't talk about parties, so to speak. They talk about their kids. They talk about the debt. They talk about the fact that groceries are so expensive. They talk about the fact that they don't think their kids are going to be able to buy a home. They talk about student debt. There's so many things that they are feeling every day that is not even being talked about in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
And I think that's the part that more politicians need to be out among the people. Because when you hear what they have to say, those are the things that matter.
I think that's an important part of that conversation. The American people recognize that freedom is fragile and that a lot of the things that have nothing to do with red or blue, Democrat or Republican, anything about political talking points or keeping score or raising campaign cash, but things that actually matter to the American people, their children, their grandchildren, what it costs to put food on the table, how they're going to retire in the years ahead, how their community is going to remain strong. Those are important conversations, and I wish we had more leaders in the country that were out amongst the people more, listening to that conversation, because it's very different from the conversation we're regularly served up from our nation's capital. Now, as I closed out my sit-down conversation with the former Ambassador Nikki Haley during her visit here to the state of Utah, I ended with the question that I have asked every political figure I've ever interviewed during a campaign season, from those running for the highest office of the land in the presidency to those running for the school board or a county commissioner seat. And the question that I always ask is, elections are hard, they're exhausting, they're exasperating, they're very tough on families. It can all be very difficult and brutal. And so my question to the ambassador, and my question to every politician is, what is it that's going to make all of this worth it, even if you don't get the result you want on Election Day. Take a listen.
This is about me putting on the warning signs to say, don't ignore what's happening right in front of us. We are better than this. We can do better than this. But we have to agree that we have to be part of the solution. I'm willing to take the cuts. I'm willing to take the bruises. I'm willing to take the pain and the name calling. Because I think good things come when you go through the pain. But I also think